everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Speaking Legally, where the legal meets the cultural. My name is Dr. Stacey N.C. Grant. Welcome to the show. Our co-hosts are Royce Russell, Esquire, and Ed Pichardo, Esquire. Unfortunately, Ed is taking care of business, so he may not be able to join us for the entirety of the show, but we just want to welcome you. Thank you for supporting the information that's being shared, sharing this broadcast with those who you think can use some knowledge and be aware of how we're navigating this new normal that we're experiencing, dealing with both pandemics, the pandemic of COVID-19 and racism. So there's a lot to talk about today. But before we jump into the topic, I'm going to give our co-host Royce Russell an opportunity to greet everyone.
Hello, everybody. Just want to say welcome back to Speaking Legally. We're going to chop this segment up in the episode into three little pieces here. First, I want to talk about this theory of acting in concert. Then I want to talk about the theory of failing to intervene. I think they're very, very much appropriate, and we'll be hearing this terminology throughout the duration of the Floyd trial and as we talk about reform. And then I want to speak a little bit about the 50A in New York City. The details in the legislation and the broad brush, we should not get excited. We should wait for the I's to be dotted and the T's to be crossed. And here we are. So let's get rocking and rolling, Dr. Grant.
We'll get rocking and rolling when my allergies stop. Oh my gosh, like right in the middle of the show, pollen is killing me. But before we jump into that, we also want to just say that we see and hear all of the comments and messages that you're sending us. There's so much going on and everyone's trying to process. And some of you said, thank you so much for providing Speaking Legally so that you can learn some new things about the law and how that pertains to our culture. So thank you for letting us know that this is beneficial, but we need you to also follow Mr. Russell and Mr. Pichardo on Facebook, and you can catch him on IG at R Square ESQ, as you see going through our ticker today. So with that being said, let's jump into the first topic. I know everybody, I want to kind of go, I know you gave an order, but can we start?
No. We're not going to argument. This is going to be a streamline. We're not even doing it. Matter of fact, I'm adjusting the camera because we need an adjustment right now. Here's the adjustment. Yeah. See, I'm leaning towards the door. If you act up, that's the door. So we're going to lean towards that. We're going to go back to the picture.
Oh, Lord. Let's just start.
You know, Ed is not here, so you want to fight, but you know, we're going to peace. Kumbaya.
Ed, where are you?
Kumbaya.
Go ahead, Mr. Russell.
Right. So I'm going to get back to what we started to talk about in our last segment. And what we talked about on our last segment was this theory about acting in concert. And that's usually a theory used in criminal cases. And the reason why I want to bring it up is because I heard from one of the attorneys on the CNN trying to position his client already to walk away with an acquittal or not guilty whenever this trial is to happen. And so there's going to be a lot to be said about this trial when it happens. And you know, Speaking Legally is going to be all on it. We are the CLN of the news right now, where the cultural and the legal news meet. And we're going to make sure that it meets right where you want it to meet so you can listen to us live. All right. No holds bar. So let's talk. But with that said, let's go to this concept of acting in concert. It's a concept that's used in criminal cases. And that's where I know it the most. So what it basically says is acting in concert is that although I didn't do the same thing that you did, we acted together to complete a mission. So if you're on a basketball team, the mission is to score. So if I'm a basketball player and I'm the point guard on the court, and as we already know, everybody, Mr. Russell's great on the court and in the courtroom. I mean, like, do I need to say that one more time for those out there that don't know? Mr. Russell is great on the court. That's the little shake right there. That's the Allen Iverson crossover. You only see a part of my face. And as I move my hands in the courtroom. So with that being said, using the basketball analogy, if I'm the point guard and I pass it to one of my players and they score and the objective is to score, we're acting in concert. I got the ball, I pass it, he scores. That's acting in concert. The mission is to score. So when we look at George Floyd, there could be a theory of one of the officers acting in concert, given that that officer was blocking anybody from taping it, from taping the criminal conduct that was taking place. Now, you say that might be a stretch, Mr. Russell. And I say, no, no, no. It is not a stretch, because how is he any different than the lookout guy in front of the bank robbery? The robber's inside taking care of the business, and the lookout is outside watching to see if anybody's coming, blocking those from viewing anything. The same could be said here. Now, we have to talk about intent and mens rea. We can get into all that. But in this stage where we are right now, that should be the avenue that we should be moving. We want the highest penalty possible. We don't want anybody to walk away with anything. We want guilty across the board. And when you start looking at acting in concert, that sends a different signal than abetting. Abetting is like, I assisted you, I helped you. Acting in concert, I know it may be a stretch. It says that we acted together to facilitate a certain means, and they definitely acted together to facilitate the means to make sure Mr. Floyd did not move, and did not move forever and forever. So I would like.
Let me pause right there before you go into continuing explaining. I hear that some people are doing their own litigation in their houses and around conversations because one of the police officers was a rookie who apparently only had a couple of days, if that much, on the job. Do you think that still applies to him with acting in concert?
Well, here it is. It doesn't matter how long you're on the job, right? Wrong is wrong and right is right. And if you see something going on and you participate in hiding that something, then that's a problem, right? I'm sure the training was not that you have to obey, no matter what, the officer that you're shadowing. We all know the mentor-mentee relationship. We all know that the more experienced police officer takes the less experienced police officer. And the municipality and the captain and the sergeant all know who is being teamed up with who. Everybody has a reputation in life. Good, bad, or different. Everybody has a reputation in life. And so when you team that youngster up with that more experienced officer, you know what could come out of that. So as we read the tea leaves, what do you expect a younger officer to do? It's not an excuse. It's just the way America works, and it's the way law enforcement works. And that is overall a problem in and of itself. But I would like for us to stretch that acting in concert theory and demand and talk about it, and at least put a pin in it, because we might see that later on as things develop and as trials and charges go through and presentations, and as we look to the pundits that are going to be on TV. Because I tell you one thing, there's a whole lot of pundits on TV right about now. We need to make sure that we do critical thinking and critical listening as to what is being said and how many times things are being said and who is saying it, who is saying it and why they're saying it. So I just wanted to make sure that we hit that before we move on.
And also the importance of acting in concert, because now that we have witnessed the murder of George Floyd, a lot of other tapes are surfacing about other situations where officers either killed another Black man and or used excessive force, and there were more than one officer involved, or there was more than one officer involved at the scene. So this acting in concert is very important and critically important in the reform that everyone's calling for, because now it won't be as easy. If something like that really is able to pass, in my understanding, wouldn't it be harder for officers to throw their hands up in the air like they had no idea what was going down with a rogue cop that's not doing their job?
Right. And so what I'm saying to that end is that, especially when you look to prosecution and you look to that theory, that might be something that we need to really, really hone in on, because that terminology puts the fear in God in most people that fail to do something. And so that allows me to transition, right? So when I say fail to do something, so now we're talking about this theory called failing to intervene. And that's more of a theory that we use in the civil rights arena. And what we're saying is that the officers involved did not intervene on behalf of the alleged accused or the alleged defendant, actually let the wrongdoing continue and go on. They didn't intervene at the moment, and they didn't intervene when they got back at the precinct to say this is what happened. They just failed to intervene whatsoever. And I always talk about in cardiac arrest, a tactical guide on how to handle unlawful police stops. For every action, there's a reaction. For every action, there's a reaction. So an action could be not doing anything. That's an action. You're actually not doing anything. The reaction could be is that now you're named in the lawsuit as an individual because you failed to intervene. And so as we talk about 50A and we talk about reforming the police department, it needs to be some antenna that speaks to either one, glorifying that intervene and say, hey, look, take your knee off of that neck. Don't hit that kid. I'm not going to let you do that. Or there need to be more disciplined actions for those who fail to intervene. Now, I'm going to take us back a little bit. We talk about NYPD 12. Those are police officers, people of color, and litigation is still going on with that, where they said, we're not going to deal with quotas. We're not going to just write tickets to write tickets. As a matter of fact, we stand against that. You can transfer me to any state you want, get the worst detail whatsoever. We're not going to do that. They, in a very out-of-the-box way, they intervene. They stop. They say, you know what, this quota system is wrong. We're not going to live with that. So we're going to intervene, and we're not going to do it. The consequences, the reaction to the action was one, bad assignment. Two, you were forced to either resign and or sue for discriminatory practices and be shunned because they tore down the blue wall. So it is not going to be easy. It may not be fun, but it is what needs to be done. So when we look at the concept of failing to intervene, that let's just say you, Dr. Grant, you're out and the police stop you and one of the officers is asking you for ID. Then they remove you from the car saying that, oh yeah, you changed lanes without putting on your change lane signal. And then now the officer wants to search you. And I am the other officer and I'm watching this. I have a duty to you. I have a duty to the profession or the quote unquote career to stop the bad actor from going beyond what is normal. Stop the bad actor from searching you. There's no reason to search you. She failed to change it. She failed to put a signal on. Give her a ticket on her way. No need to ask you to get out of the car. I don't see anything in plain view that is of criminal mindset. I don't smell anything. If I say I smell something, there still might be a reason to intervene in that. The other officers say you're lying. We're not doing this today. And that needs to be praised and uplifted. And the reason why I believe more officers don't do that, I'm hoping, is because they realize the consequences and the ramifications of doing it, and they fear that, as opposed to just buying into what it is to be a police officer and don't do it at all.
So let's just talk about that for a reason. When you talk about the blue wall of silence and the reasons why folks won't intervene, I mean, it's a lofty goal. It's a goal that we're going to keep persisting and pressing towards. But the police unions are also a part of this whole conversation because they seem to get their folks off every time one of these cases come up. There's some loophole. There's something else that gives them an out on why they didn't intervene. Well,
here's the out. The out is that usually they say that it happened so quickly. And there is some room for that, right? The other out is that if I don't say anything, I know nothing is going to happen to me. And so therefore, I'm not going to say anything. And I'm just going to stay quiet and I'll be protected in that. Or what they'll do is they'll give a little kernel. As you being processed and you're being handcuffed and you're being moved from the station car to the precinct, the guy who fails to intervene or the woman who fails to intervene or your Black brother or your Latino sister may give you the badge or the shield number to the person that's bad actor, because what happens in these cases, I want everybody to put their good ears on, not their bad ear, put their good ears on right now, because I'm going to drop you a little tidbit. Here's the tidbit. Usually what happens is that the officer that abuses you is not the officer that is named on the paperwork that arrests you. They do a little 3-card Monty on you, find the red chip, the card flips around. I abuse you, the arrest goes to someone else, and then the process goes on. Now, here's the 52 pump fake. Here's the 52 pump fake right here. They can do that. Go ahead. You want to switch it up? Who's the arresting officer opposed to the abusing officer? I, having been a reader of cardiac arrest and understand my rights, then I'm just going to go after you. You want to put your name on paper as to signing off on what may have happened and not finding out what really happened. You want to take an assigned arrest, as they call it. You assign the arrest to someone else. That's what you want to do. Okay, then your name goes on the paperwork, and then you're going to have to eventually tell me through litigation who was present and who was hitting me in the head, who was the one that was doing wrong by me. And so we can do that. But if we're playing chess while they're playing checkers, we're one step ahead. So the failure to intervene is very, very, very powerful, because it would get you more than what you ever expect. But the only way you get to that is that you're using one of the antennas of cardiac arrest, and that is being aware of what's going on around you, being aware that you get one officer's name and use it against another. And so I want us to hold on to that concept, because I almost guarantee you that the Floyd matter will most likely be settled. There probably will not be any civil case whatsoever. And so this concept of what happens to the other officers, where is the Floyd's family pound of flesh on a civil perspective in reference to these other officers, may not come to surface. But if the quote unquote analysts out there is doing the right thing, they should talk about this.
So let's pause. You said it might not go to trial. You said there might be a settlement. Why do you feel that? And before you answer, I just want to shout out Sonia. Thank you, Sonia, always being here, reporting for duty. Richard Russell, I think you might know Richard Russell II, and Deborah Johnson. We appreciate all of you tuning in today, and definitely share this broadcast out. But given your legal background, why do you feel it'll go to a settlement and there won't be a trial?
Well, we're talking about on a civil aspect. In the civil aspect, it'll probably be settled, not in the criminal aspect. But what will happen is that there's two avenues. One, there's an avenue that maybe the family and the Minnesota Police Department want to resolve this early on before there's a trial in the civil aspect, and then move that out of the way. Or hopefully, if the family has the wherewithal, and we could discuss this at another date and another time, the wherewithal and the strength to see through the criminal case, see it all the way through, and use all that they learn from the civil case, from the criminal case in the civil case, then that would make for a better civil case. So let me repeat that. If they have the power, because it is, you need power to go through this. I mean, spiritual power to go through the criminal case and not have any vindication whatsoever on the civil level. If they have the power to endure the criminal case from beginning to end, there's so much information that's going to be useful for them on the civil case that it probably will not happen.
Let's break it down, because this is where the legal meets the cultural. So for the average person who might not know the difference between the pursuit of the criminal case and the civil case, what's the difference between two? I think everybody automatically gets we're going after the murderers of George Floyd, but what's the difference between criminal and civil, just for the person who might not understand?
Well, the criminal, we're dealing with punitive from a way of incarceration, imprisonment. And the civil, we're looking at either one, some type of reform, if possible, termination, and we're looking monetary compensation. And let's just culturally take it from a perspective of who we are. And let's look at the majority, right? And this is going to be a broad brush. Let everybody know this is a broad brush. Majority of folks that are victimized by excessive force, excessive force or false arrest are people of color, and they fall on a certain social economic status. The lower end, higher probability, higher end of the social economic status, lower probability. So when it comes down to, you have a case where you've been abused physically, excessive force, or force arrest, and there is no criminal trial, then what is happening is that there's a negotiation between the attorney like myself and the city and the police department to negotiate what is a fair settlement, or do we go to trial? And because of the social economics, and now I'm being very cultural, we need to understand this. This is our reality in most places. Because of the social economics, people are more likely to settle than to wait it out and actually go to trial and actually see what can happen at the end of trial. And if there is a criminal case, to have that criminal case go first and then use all the tools from there in your civil case. Now that could be a long time, and sometimes we don't have the wherewithal spiritually, definitely financially in some respects, and emotionally to wait that long. But this is what we're faced, and the more people that we have in the trial, that means those officers that fail to intervene, the better we are, the more likely we are to get reformed, because those officers will never want to be named in something that they didn't have a part in, or all they had to do was say stop, and maybe that could have made the difference.
So thank you for explaining that, because I think it's important for folks to understand all that's going to be coming out in the news and how they're talking about the criminal case and the prospects for civil case. So now culturally, you understand what's going on. When we talk about disparities, once again, the emotional part is draining, but the financially, we're not in a position most times in our community when these things happen to be able to your point, see it through all the way to trial. So once again, we're adding another layer to why we have to continue to persist for equality for all. Like, it's not equal access, and the disparities are definitely being seen in a broader lens because of what started when we started this whole series talking about COVID-19. And now look where we are with it's a turning point. The history books are going to write what happens in 2020 as a result of the straw breaking the camel's back, as the old saying goes. And George Floyd was enough, right? We've had how many in such a short period of time? So I just hope everybody understands that there are levels to this, and we need to understand what that looks like, because there are a lot of cases that are not going to be litigated in the court of public opinion. There's so many others that are in the same situation, families who are still seeking justice for the death and the excessive force that has happened to their family members. And a lot of it is coming out now because of where we are. But you need to know, if you know somebody within the community who has suffered at the hands of an unlawful stop or excessive force. That's why Attorney Royce Russell and Ed Pichardo are part of this show, so that you have access to somebody on the ground that can help direct you and give you the best options possible for you to litigate your case. But enough of that.
Here's the cultural part. And let me, I've been very polite and delicate with the cultural part. Here's the cultural part. If you work in a 9-to-5 and you happen to be a victim of police brutality, false arrest, don't think that you can quit your 9-to-5. Don't think that all of a sudden you can take out loans and you can take out money over money, but now you want the case to end very quickly. You have to be in it for the long haul. You have to be in it for the marathon. Things have not changed where all of a sudden you can shift and want to, what I'm going to say, cash out early. Because if you care about reform, cashing out early won't get you there. In the game, the more information you get, the better you are situated. There are a number of people that just prior to George Floyd had situations that we talked about. Should we settle? Should we hold on? Let's think about it. And because of George Floyd has put a new light on what their case means monetarily and what their case means spiritually and for themselves. And I think if you're from the community and you have an attorney that's about the community and in the community, then you can walk that walk together. And that's a different conversation than you would have with any other attorney. that you can actually walk that walk, and I can understand, and you can understand, we can commiserate, and we can rejuvenate our spirits, and we can talk about what it's all about, and what victory looks like and what justice looks like. And I think that is important. So I know I talked about we want to talk about 50A. So
hold on. We have some comments that our viewers are sharing, and I just want to shout you out and thank you for being active in the conversation today. And if you have questions, I'm going to ask you to put it in the chat as well. But Richard said, cardiac arrest, our new study guide. Amen to that, my brother. Deborah Johnson says, so true. David, hey, David Witherspoon, he said, we got one in Jersey now. So they're dealing with a case that just happened. Roz, hey, Roz, thank you for being there. Hey, Robert Ross, so true, real talk. We appreciate that. I mean, and that's what the purpose of the show is, where the legal meets the cultural. You have two seasoned defense attorneys, civil rights attorneys, as well as immigration attorneys. And we're here, and Ed also represents our Latino family, that you have someone that you can talk to and you can reach out to both of them for the right information. Because a lot of times on the street, let's keep it real, we talk about culture, we giving each other legal advice and nobody has a JD. So let folks know about speaking legally. This is where the legal meets the culture. We want to break it down in simple forms that everybody can understand and be able to advocate for their rights. But yes, reform is on the table. New York has a lot popping off, as the kids would say, today with 50A, and I know we want to jump into that. And thank you, Marvin, for joining. We appreciate you as well. And Daryl, thank you for being here.
Well, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about 50A. Look, CPR, the Justice Committee, Until Freedom, Justice League NYC, Cop Watch, all these organizations in New York played a role in hammering down 50A. And it's amazing how the years that I've been advocating with these groups and them supporting me and clients as we fought through various civil rights litigations, we always ran across that if 50A was repealed or reformed, there would be all these civil servant rules and regulations, employment law violations, so therefore it can't be. And right after Floyd's death, now we have de Blasio and everyone now reforming and ready to reform.
Hold on. Here's a little 50A. Before we even get into what they're doing with it, what is 50A? Explain that to everybody.
Let me go back. And it is amazing to see this happening, especially, and here's the political commentary, a mayor that took over 5 years to terminate one officer in reference to Eric Gardner and in reference to Ramarley Graham, act like he didn't have any power to terminate that officer in any shape, form, or fashion, and withered under the pressure of revealing things such as disciplinary records under 50A. But we're going to say that's water under the bridge. I would tell you that's sewer water, but it's still water under the bridge. It just smells funny and definitely tastes funny, and it's dangerous and not good for your health. But all of a sudden now we on seawater now. Now we got salt water. So I'll take it where I can take it. And I'm not taking it with a smile, because we need to look at the details of 50A. 50A really speaks to, and is the highlight, is being able to divulge the disciplinary records of bad actors, police officers. Now, the foundation of 50A was not founded on revealing bad actors. As a matter of fact, the foundation of 50A was built on protecting good actors, protecting those within the police department, within certain employment, that revealed certain things that you could not go after them. You could not be a vigilante and do something against them. But I tell people all the time, it's about implementation. And I'll circle around. We talk about in cardiac arrest, quota cop, right? We know that in every job there is quotas that need to be met. But how do you meet those quotas? How are you implementing that? Are you implementing that on a racial scale, racial profiling? Are you implementing that on an arbitrary scale, just being arbitrary and capricious, just writing up tickets everywhere? So when we look at 50A, it was about the implementation. It was meant for good, but it's used for bad. And so what do you mean by used for bad? Used for bad was that is that it held transparency at the back door, did not let transparency walk into the front door. It is used as a color only type of law, a new type of Jim Crow. You could not talk about someone's history. You could not talk about how many times the police officer has been investigated. It was a backdoor piece of information. So now let me explain what I mean by backdoor. Myself as a litigant, someone that fights these type of cases, I could get the information. I get a court subpoena, I motion to the court, NYPD has to give me the disciplinary records of the officers. We may fight and haggle whether it's 5 years or 10 years, but I'm gonna get those records. But the public still doesn't have those records, and I'm prohibited from making those records public. I have to sign it under, I have to get it under a protective order that protects the people that we're suing, and I can't make it public. That's the history. So from a litigant standpoint, it hasn't really changed the game that much, except for when I have organizations that are working with me and they want to do a press release. Now I can take that information and say, here you go. This is what we know, because it is out in the world. It is transparent. Where does that leave people in the community? My brothers, my sisters, my padre. Where does that leave folks out in the street? They'll never know. So now 50A reform is saying, now we're going to make that transparent. No longer is there going to be a day that if Royce Russell get beat up, you're going to talk about how he stole a bag of chips when he was in the 4th grade, or how he cheated on a test when he was in the 7th grade, or how, you know, he jumped the turnstile when he was 15 years old, and just leave it at that and make Royce Russell look like the bad actor. Now we can go into who the officer is and what that officer did, and that could be on NBC News, ABC News, CNN, and a whole variety of other media outlets. And let me just say one thing. Shame on all the media out there, because the media outlets could have took this another way. What they could have done is never vilified the victim, never showed the person that he was arrested for this, that, and the other, if it had no bearing on why he was stopped and why he was beaten. And what media chose to do, they chose to sensationalize the opportunity, commit character assassination on the victim, and then walk away with the cheapo statement that the Police Benevolent Association would not give us any background information on the police officer, so therefore we can't say anything. Versus the even playing field, which says, I'm not going to say nothing about the victim's history because I can't say anything about the officer's history. We just want to leave it at, let the video and let the facts stand where they stand. But now, because we have feet in the street and we got bottles across the head and cars being burnt, not in our community, I clap for that. Not in our community, but in somebody else's community, communities where it counts, where the economic is hidden, because the economic has to be part of the protest and the revolution. It has to be feet in the street. It has to be pen to paper, and it has to be economics, you know, for all. Now we have this repeal of 50A, which now makes it transparent. That the public
So let's talk about how important that is. I didn't want to lose this point because you brought this up a couple of episodes back that comes straight out of your book, Cardiac Arrest, the importance of making a complaint. And you talk over and over again about the fact that we need to push the line back on what is really serving and protecting, and that we don't take certain things, oh, that's just the way it is, and you get used to bad behavior. But when you make these complaints, it goes on record. And you were saying that before the repeal of 50A, that make the complaint. If something went wrong, or you were handled in a way that was not proper on a police stop, or you've experienced excessive force, whatever it is, you make that complaint. And now, if I'm correct, because you're making those complaints, and with this now 50A passing, you'll be able to look back in someone's record and see just how many times they did not honor the badge that they're wearing.
Not only will we be able to look at the NBC reporter, the CNN reporter, the ABC, the Fox News, and you know what, BET should jump on the new news program, BET News, like we really get down. That's right, I'm saying it. Let's throw it in the air, where you can say this officer has several citations for discourteousness, 3 citations for illegal arrest, has 4 lawsuits pending. That speaks volumes. That gives the person that's been victimized some energy and some power. That gives the person that decided, you know what, I'm gonna file a complaint, but I don't really want to go forward. But somebody else that comes after me can then use what I have done to move forward. It's like a relay. Somebody else passed the baton. I don't have time for it, but maybe somebody else has time for it. And that's what we're looking for. And that's what I've always looked for. And now we live to see a day where that is now going to be on front page blast for those. Although there are some prosecutors, some district attorneys out there that are holding on to major investigations, wrongful death cases that I'm involved in, and many others, and they have not moved on their investigation. And hopefully the revealing of information like this and the protest in the street will move that ball forward.
And we can only hope that this is some. Everybody keeps saying something's different about this time. Something's different about this time, and the pressure and the persistence of raising and amplifying the voices who have always been here, advocating for equal rights and justice, advocating for access, looking at the disparities and seeing how things connect. My concern is that we don't jumble everything up. There are layers to what everybody is speaking about that's happening all in real time. It's like a cocktail of grand proportions between COVID-19 and the economic disparities, the health disparities. Racism did not just appear in 2020. It's been here for 400 years plus one. So we're dealing with a multitude of issues, and we just want to make sure everybody's able to separate and look at each one. And this show is about helping you to understand the legal aspect of what we're seeing show up culturally in our community and how we can be advocates in getting information out. So you have an attorney that they can call someone like you or Ed to get advice on how to proceed, because that point that there are cases that have been on hold, we hope everything comes out now. And that 58 is just the start. So as we move into wrapping up the conversation, what other things should we be aware of that's bubbling up in New York, that's bubbling up in Minneapolis, all of these reforms? Some people are saying defund the police. People are saying, no, they just need to be corrected. Let's jump into that. And if you have a question, I'll get to it in the feed, but I want Mr. Russell to touch on a little bit of that today.
So one of the things that they're calling it the Eric Gardner rule, no chokehold. Now, I'm going to use this term, what I call a pump fake 52. What's the pump fake 52? All right, there's a game back then. I'm old time. There was a game called 52. You know, you shoot, whoever get 52 points win, right? And so playing ball in the Bronx and then switching over and playing ball in Harlem, was a couple of guys that we would call pump fake 52. And what's a pump fake 52? Is that you fake as if you're shooting and someone jumps as if you're shooting while you're playing this game 52, because if you miss, they get the rebound, they're able to score, and you kind of calculate who gets to that number first. So what you do, you pump like you're going to shoot, watch the person run in, and then look at you, ran in. So pump fake 52. The pump fake 52 is that they say chokeholds are illegal. Well, the chokeholds have always been illegal by the patrol guard. That's, you just can't use it, right? But where they made progress is that allegedly, and so unless it's signed, I'm going to use the word allegedly, now the person will be charged with a C felony. That means C felony, that's mandatory jail time. Now, I'm going to tell you something about muscle memory. It's very hard to get people to stop doing what they used to doing. And if you're used to grabbing folks in the chokehold to get a better position, then that's what you're going to do. Now, we have to look at the details. Once again, the media is doing a broad brush. Now, if you chokeholds are illegal, they've always been illegal in the patrol guide. You're not supposed to do it, at least in New York, but maybe they're not in many other places. But now if you do it, and if you call serious physical injury or physical injury, the terminology is not really defined. As I've been reading different articles, you could be charged with a C felony. So that's good news, but we have to make sure that we do critical thinking and critical reading in what is being disseminated. And thank God for the new generation where information is given in different facets: social media, the standard news, Instagram, the web, and you can get all of that internet, all that information and then come up with what you think is reality and what is fake or what is broad brush. So that's one of the things. The other thing is that I look over here, they're talking about videotaping. Now, the patrol guide speaks to, you have a right to videotape. Now, unless there's something more in the tea leaves that I'm not getting from the passing of, you can videotape. Well, you can always videotape. You have to stand 20 feet away, but you can still videotape. So I want to know what's the teeth in that part. And, my partner Ed is not here. Maybe he would give me some more bite on that. But what's the teeth in the fact that you can't video? We know it. Are you reaffirming that you can video and that it's not a crime? Well, it's never been a crime. And the patrol guy says that you can do that. And prevention of that is going against the patrol guide. So I just want us to make sure that we're mindful and that we are doing critical thinking and reading as we look at the reforms. It is important to us. And now they're talking about this early intervention for those who violate the patrol guide or who have complaints against them. I really got to look at the details in this. What is an early intervention? I mean, if you intervening, you're already late. If you intervening, you late. So, I mean, we've been asking for training and retraining. We've been asking for cultural sensitivity. We've been asking for all these things. Is that another way of just saying what we asked for is retraining or early intervention? They could be put back on the right path. What I don't see in this bill, and I wonder who kicked it off the table or whether it was too hot to touch, is where's the psychological evaluations that should happen every 6 to 8 months or every year for officers that's on the job.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's important to say. You mentioned it as well multiple times in your book that officers are human beings too. And we're not saying that every officer is a bad officer. But if you're going through things and you're having stuff in your personal life, it can affect how you show up for work every day. And having the kind of trauma that anybody on the front line deals with, I think it should be mandatory for you to get some sort of psychological evaluation. We're all human beings and none of us are perfect. We're doing our best to make better choices and decisions that not only affect our lives with other people, but for such as a police officer, why wouldn't you have that information? And here's something that has come up in conversations. I've been on so many panels and discussions about what we're seeing. And I had one of my white counterparts share that a lot of times these officers that use excessive force are also abusive in their home to their wives and their children. And I'm like, wow, that's another whole conversation about how that psychological piece is so important, because if they're drinking because of what they're doing on the job or abusing drugs and nobody knows, like, where's the check and balance? Where's that point where we're really seeing what's going on in the head of the people that are supposed to be serving and protecting us?
One of the things I would add to that is that you said that those same officers might be abusive to their wives. We got to make sure that we are correct in all shape, form, or fashion, because there might be a switch, because the wife might be the police officer and she might be beating up somebody her darn self. But I mean, I understand to your point that the abuse may go beyond the job, or the job may be causing the abusive conduct. And so therefore, that's even more of a reason to have the psychological evaluation or these touch points that we can reevaluate whether someone is fit to proceed in this profession. And it is a profession. One of the things I don't see in this legislation, and maybe there's more to come, is termination. How is that happening? Like, what reform in reference to that termination? I've always talked about financial accountability and responsibility. Will the officers have to pay? Have you pay to play? Is that the next level? Is that what we should be pushing for? So therefore, there is some other consequential ramifications of bad actors. And so that needs to be looked at. And we need to look at, when they talk about defunding, what does that mean for a community that's already underserved? How does defunding already affect a community that's not served enough? Now, what should be platform when you talk about defunding is more community policing and how the money should be spent in that way. But we could talk about that another day and another time. But you know, that's my pet peeve, because we had community policing. I wouldn't say it wasn't a problem. There was less of a problem.
Absolutely. And it's somebody said, Diane, hi Diane. She said, what about their pensions? That's a good point.
Well, this is what I
affected. You said financially.
This is what I mean.
Consequences.
This is what I mean by the financial consequences, right? Is it something that happens to their pension? Is it that they pay 5%? Is it that they pay 2%? Is it that they pay 10%? When you're making, look, I do understand that police officers are, if not underpaid, just above paid. Careers starting out at 32 or 33 or 25. But it is a career. It's a career of service. And not many areas where you have a career of service where it is lucrative on the back end. And everyone has to be disciplined in some shape, form, or fashion. But when you have an organization or an entity that disciplines themselves, self-regulates themselves, that is a problem. And now that is what we're seeing. We're seeing the doors crack a little bit open to say, you can't self-regulate yourself. We need third parties to regulate themselves. I know as an attorney, I'm regulated by the bar, and I even have to have malpractice insurance. Same thing with the doctor. Some of the highest standards careers in our community have to have those things. And we need to look into that, because nobody gets a free pass. Nobody.
And that's really a huge part of the outcry from everyone, that no one gets a pass for murder, no matter who you are. No one gets a pass for indecent behavior. And it's a long road ahead. This is not, a sprint. This is not going to be over in a couple of months and we can go back to business as normal. This is a marathon. And this has been years of systemic racism and within departments. And it's encouraging to see that there's certain chief of police that are speaking up and are breaking the blue wall of silence. I can only imagine what kind of hate emails they might be receiving with saying that we do need reform, that we do need to change what has happened, that they're agreeing that there's been systemic racism. So I just want to celebrate those who are doing their part with saying that's not us, that what happened in Minneapolis doesn't represent how I feel every time I put on a uniform and I wear this badge, because I took an oath, because I really believed in serving and protecting my community. So kudos to those who are opening their mouths and they're not keeping this blue wall of silence going. And for those who are being silent, you're helping and you're part of the problem. So we appreciate that we can have real talk and discussion, because in our community, right in New York City, the majority of the folks are Black and brown. So they tried to infiltrate a system that wasn't working in our behalf or on our behalf. And you talk very clearly that it's not just about race, it's about the power and how people perceive that they can operate once they wear a badge. So I just always want us to be conscious that there are so many pieces to this conversation. And what we want to highlight are the bad actors. What we want to highlight is the fact that we need to push for the reforms in the area that count and not just fluff, that is not generic, that we really can see holistic change across the board when it comes to our criminal justice system. So I'm going to check for a few questions before we start winding down the show.
While you check for questions, one of the things I want everyone to understand is that George Floyd is a result. It's a result. What came before that result is the police officer talking to you any which way he wants to, the police officer ordering you any which way they want to, handling you any way they want to, showing intolerance towards you and your plight any which way they want to, always viewing it from their perspective and not viewing it from your perspective, not having an understanding that when I stop this person of color, I don't know what they've been through. They may have been stopped numerous times today, any sensitivity, any cultural sensitivity. And then you have the physical, and then you have the George Floyd. And I've always advocated, and I will every single time I'm on this show and then some when appropriate, is that we need to push back the lie. And we start with the complaints that he was discourteous to me. She was discourteous to me. She yelled, she cursed at me. Yes, it may not get them fired, it may not get them terminated, but guess what? Now it becomes part of their file. And first comes the verbal, then it comes the physical, and then comes the death.
That's a huge point. First verbal, then physical, then death. That's been the pattern that we've seen, and why we can't even get past pages of names. It's albums of photos of the unlawful deaths of so many Black faces, and why it's so important for us to educate those who were living under a bubble somewhere, who didn't realize, quote unquote, that it was that bad. And some of the comments said, Deborah said, police officers have changed totally from when I was coming up. They used to be our buddies and pals, even if someone had a problem. And a lot of people are agreeing with that. That's community policing, that you know someone's name, you know what family they come from, that there are kids that act up no matter what skin color you have. Kids will be kids, but officers knew how to tap them on the shoulder and say, look, don't let me catch you doing that again, or don't let me call your mama, or don't let me tell grandpa, because they knew the community. They came from the community, they knew the community, and in certain circumstances, some of them were not Black, but they were around enough to know who community members were, who to talk to when something goes down, and that's missing. So thank you for those questions. And deal with ego, rationale. Exactly, Roz. There's a lot that we're dealing with. So it's been a very lively discussion in our chat today, and we appreciate you sharing your thoughts. And we thank you for sharing Speaking Legally with your community. You can just press forward and share it on your pages and let people know 4 o'clock every Wednesday, Eastern Standard Time. We're here with Royce Russell Esquire and Ed Pichardo Esquire, and you can visit them both at their law offices online at RoyceRussellEsquire.com and the law office of EdwardPichardo.com, so that you have attorneys on dial at the ready. You don't have to wait until something goes down before you're scrambling to find out who you can call to get resources and information. So I just invite you to connect with them and keep them alongside all of the other urgent responders you need, your doctor and your accountant and all the other important individuals. An attorney should be there as well to help guide you through these turbulent times that we're living in.
One of the things I would like to add is that as we look and we push forward for reform and revolution, we also have to understand we can't put all of our issues in somebody else's hand. And so, yes, we push the legislature, yes, we protest, yes, we push police to do certain things, but we have to also look to ourselves to empower ourselves and put ourselves in a position that we can counteract anything that comes our way. And that's why I really believe in Cardiac Arrest, the book. And that's why I really believe in having these conversations, because you empower yourself to put yourself in a better position to deal with the nonsense, the racism, the economic classism that's out here, and be able to tell a story to the next person, whether written or verbally. But we need to make sure that we don't look outward, we look inward and keep the positive movement and education inwardly. So, you know, look, we sign off many a times on Speaking Legally. You know, that's the word to the wise, that we have to look to ourselves. We can't rely on everybody else, everyone else.
That's right. No one's coming to save us. We have to do it ourselves, and collectively we see what putting the pressure on does. So thank you, Marvin. Thank you, Roz. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Richard. Thank you all for tuning in and being a part of the discussion today. We pray for everyone's safety as you navigate through the coronavirus, or we coin it culturally, the Rona. It's still live and well, and we just want to make sure that it doesn't affect any more of us, because we know disproportionately how it's showing up in our communities. So our prayers continue to go out to those who are fighting through recovery and those who have lost loved ones. On behalf of Edward Pichardo, we want to say thank you for joining today. He sends his love. He'll be back with us next week, Wednesday. God spare all our lives, for another episode of Speaking Legally. Mr. Russell can be contacted at www.roycerussellesquire.com or cardiacarrestbook.net. And Mr. Pichardo can be contacted at the law office of EdwardPichardo.com. So thank you so much. You can stay connected with us at Destiny Designers University. It's been a pleasure being here with you again. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you same time, same place next Wednesday. Bye-bye for now.
Take care. Be well.